Hello, and welcome to Second Step Evaluation. This webinar is for those people who are looking to examine the quality of their Second Step implementation and its effect on student outcomes. We know how important evaluating the implementation of a program can be, and so we are hoping through this webinar to draw your attention towards resources that have already been designed to help you in this process. Let us begin by introducing you to the Second Step Implementation Wheel, which depicts 6 key elements of effective implementation: motivate, prepare, train, support, validate, and sustain. Truly, there is no starting point to this wheel as it's designed to address the ongoing cycle of effective implementation. But for our purposes today, let's begin with motivate. Motivating key stakeholders to commit and participate in the program increases the overall chances of positive outcomes for students. During this process, our job is to help stakeholders understand why the program is important and necessary in your setting. Next, we want to prepare for our second step implementation by ensuring that all plans, policies, procedures, people, and materials involved are ready at the beginning of each year. Although initial training is important and necessary, ongoing training and coaching for everyone participating in the program, as appropriate for their role or level of involvement, will contribute most to program effectiveness and sustainability. Support is critical to program success and includes maintaining the necessary resources, communication, peer support, feedback, and encouragement to ensure the program is well implemented. For Validate, we collect, analyze, and report pertinent data about teaching and outcomes to demonstrate the program's effectiveness. Confirmation that the program is being taught accurately and is producing positive outcomes will help maintain motivation and guide future implementation plans. The Sustain task category involves taking steps to deepen, broaden, and continually improve program use over time. As mentioned earlier, the cyclical nature of a wheel is that there is no finish line. It simply starts again and continues on year. In saying that, and even though it is a wheel, it's not necessarily a cyclical process. If at any time you feel that staff need to be remotivated or retrained, as an example, we encourage you to jump back to the necessary part of the implementation wheel so as not to let the program momentum fall behind. A reminder here also that the Principal Toolkit is a very important resource to support your ongoing implementation. For today's purposes, we are going to take a deeper dive into the Validate section. To access the implementation wheel on secondstep.org, simply sign into your account to where you can access your classroom kits, click on Program Supports from the top menu. Once in Program Supports, scroll down to All Categories and click on the Implement Site-Wide box. Then click on Read More under Implementation Tasks, and you will be taken to the Implementation Tasks page, which outlines and expands on each task category in the implementation wheel. There are so many rich, usable resources here that will help you evaluate and monitor your implementation as you work through each task, so we highly recommend taking the time to look through this page. We'll highlight some of the resources as we go through the rest of the presentation, but it really is worth taking the time to become familiar with all of the resources you have at your fingertips for each of the implementation tasks highlighted within the implementation wheel. We always love to start with our why, so let's take a look at why we should evaluate Second Step, or any given program really. People evaluate their use of the Second Step program for a variety of reasons, but in general, the goal is to show that the resources put into the program are paying off. Often the resource that most stakeholders are concerned about is funding. Providers of funding are certainly interested in seeing whether Second Step is making a difference in your schools. But money is not the only resource invested in this project. Time is another huge resource investment for your Second Step implementation. This includes the time that any of you may have taken to attend professional learning sessions around social emotional learning, and all of the time you put into planning and rolling out your implementation. It also includes the time of every staff member within the school who has completed the online training and is taking the time to teach the lessons and plan and carry out the following through activities with the students. Justification of this time spent is likely of huge interest to yourselves and your staff members, as well as parents and other stakeholders within your community. Evaluation evidence can often be used to increase staff motivation and commitment to implementing the program fully and well. It can also help schools see how implementation might be affecting outcomes and how it might be improved to ensure students are benefiting fully from the program. Evaluation is also used for tracking progress toward desired program goals and outcomes over time. So as I mentioned before, there are two elements of second step that need to be evaluated: the quality of the implementation and evidence of student outcomes as a result of your implementation. When you are evaluating the quality of the second step implementation at your school, you want to look at how the program is actually being implemented and compare it to what is prescribed within the program, or what we refer to as a full fidelity implementation. The outcomes of your second step implementation can be evaluated by using baseline data for student outcomes from before the program implementation began and compare it to student outcome data once the program has been implemented. It's important to note here that evaluating both implementation and outcomes is really valuable, since implementation greatly affects outcomes. It is absolutely possible to simply evaluate outcomes. However, without evaluating the implementation, it is impossible to know whether the outcomes, whether positive or negative, can be attributed to the implementation of the program or some other factors within the school environment. An example of how implementation directly affects student outcomes has been highlighted in one of the randomized control trials conducted on the Second Step program. In this particular RCT, researchers found that kindergarten to grade 2 students' academic performance was increased only when they received the intervention with high implementation fidelity. Compared to students in low implementation fidelity classrooms, students who were more engaged in the lessons showed small but significant improvements in oral reading fluency and decreases in disruptive classroom behavior. Students who participated in more lessons had increased on-task behavior and improved math computation. So evaluating implementation gives us further insight when it comes to analyzing the student outcomes of the program. One of the keys to successful, effective evaluation is to be sure to know just what you are evaluating. Every school has received the same program, but what students receive can vary widely from school to school or even classroom to classroom. You can make your Second Step program more powerful and useful by looking at how the program is being implemented in your school and in each classroom. Remember, you're evaluating the intervention your students actually get, which depending on implementation might be more or less like the exact program you received. Assessing implementation primarily means gathering information on how the Second Step program is being taught in your setting. In particular, it asks the following questions. How many students are receiving Second Step lessons? How many of the lessons are being taught? How closely are lessons being taught to how they are written? Are students doing daily practice activities? What else is being done outside formal lessons to reinforce Second Step skills, both in the classroom and throughout the school? Collecting data on what students are receiving typically involves having staff complete a simple survey that asks the questions we have just talked about in the previous slide. Some surveys for this purpose have been created for you and can be found in the Implementation Tasks Validate category on secondstep.org. Here you will find the Implementation Survey, Lesson Completion Checklist, and Lesson Delivery and Reinforcement Checklist. Surveys should be filled out by relevant staff, whoever is responsible for teaching the lessons as well as doing the following through activities, which depending on your implementation strategy may or may not be the same person. Let's take a moment to talk about implementation fidelity. We use this term a lot, so let's make sure we have an understanding of what implementation fidelity looks like specifically for the second step program. A full implementation ideally means students are receiving all the lessons in order and all the content in each lesson. For a variety of reasons, staff sometimes only teach parts of lessons and skip others, teach lessons out of order, or change some of the content. These are all examples of low fidelity. Obviously, it's possible to change lessons in ways that don't harm or might even improve outcomes. For example, slight adaptations of the scripted lesson content to adhere more to your authentic voice as a teacher without changing the overall content of the lesson. But it's also possible to change lessons in ways that reduce program effectiveness. We recommend implementing the program with as much fidelity as possible, and it can be useful in an evaluation to know the fidelity with which the program was taught. Schools collect data as part of their everyday operations, and this data is often used as part of a second step program evaluation. Probably the most common form of data that schools collect is around discipline referrals. Many schools look at their discipline referrals over time to see whether implementing the second step program has resulted in fewer challenging behaviours. One of the advantages of this approach is that schools can often compare the number of referrals for the year before they implemented the second step program to the number once the second step program is in place. In addition, it's possible to track referrals over time to see whether the program results in fewer students exhibiting challenging behaviours once it's been in place for multiple years. Although it's possible to look at other types of school data for evaluation purposes, discipline referrals are the most common and safest source of information reflective of second step outcomes. Things like attendance, grades, and test scores can be affected by the program, but the program's effect on those outcomes is less direct and harder to determine. If your evaluation findings are positive in that you have fewer discipline referrals over time, congratulations! Your evaluation has shown that your second step implementation has likely improved outcomes for your students. This is the time to ensure that your school continues to teach the program and supports what students are learning in second step lessons throughout the school day and within the school environment. Remember that ongoing support for the program by building leaders has been shown to be the #1 factor that drives continued successful implementation over time. This is your opportunity to share the good news with school staff, parents, and the wider community, so your efforts continue to be encouraged and supported. If your evaluation suggests students are not benefiting sufficiently from the second step program, a natural place to look for reasons is implementation. As we've previously discussed, how the program is implemented is very important and has been shown to affect outcomes. If you haven't yet examined second step implementation as part of your evaluation, doing so may provide you with ideas for how to strengthen the program and improve the effect on students. If your evaluation included information on implementation, then poor outcomes may indicate the importance of looking closely at how the program is being implemented to see where there is room for improvement that may increase program effects. Keep in mind that high-quality second step implementation goes beyond teaching the lessons. Just like with academics, what students learn in the second step program has to be reinforced and practiced in order to be mastered. Look for ways staff can cue students to use second step skills throughout the school day and across the school environment, and find ways to reinforce students' skill use. If it appears that second step implementation in your school has been done well, it can be harder to know where to turn if you're not finding sufficiently positive outcomes from your evaluation. What is important to remember is that the program is designed to have a cumulative effect across multiple years, and that teaching it, like anything else, takes time to master. This is an opportunity to really examine the areas of the program that could be bolstered or perhaps need more support. For example, if your implementation survey results show that all teachers are teaching the program with fidelity, but your students aren't yet exhibiting the positive behaviours and skills taught in the program, then you might look at how the development of those skills can be more supported and reinforced throughout the school day. For example, is the principal using the principal toolkit for morning announcements and at assemblies? Are the playground supervisors, including older students, reinforcing and supporting skills development? Are support staff and specialist teachers well versed in supporting and reinforcing second step skills in Tier 2 and Tier 3 settings? Let's look at some behaviour referral examples from a Second Step school we have worked with recently. As you can see here, the school has collected discipline referral data at the classroom, playground, and whole school level. Their baseline data, taken from 2023 prior to their Second Step implementation, is represented in blue, and the first year of implementation of the program in 2024 is represented in yellow in those 3 line graphs. So in the classroom, they actually started out in term 1 with more discipline referrals than the previous year, but over time, classroom discipline referrals decreased throughout the year. In both the playground and across the whole school, the number of discipline referrals during their first year of implementation decreased and also stayed a lot more consistent compared to baseline data of the previous year. Then looking at the green bar graph in the bottom right-hand corner, the total number of discipline referrals across the classroom and playground were significantly decreased from 576 in the year before implementation to 375 in the first year of Second Step implementation. That's a 35% decrease, and you can imagine what the roll-on effects of this were throughout the school and within each of the classrooms. Thank you for taking the time to take a quick dive into the possibilities of program evaluation for your Second Step implementation. We encourage you to take the time to explore the resources mentioned in this presentation on secondstep.org, and should you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.